First of all, what makes me eligible to talk about diversity? I'm very diverse. First of all, let me ask you, do you know what people mean when they call you Rasian? Rasian means Russian Asian, and this is me. And originally, I wasn't sure how I should relate to it, whether I should be offended, humorous about it. I was born in Russia, my dad is Korean, and I'm a citizen of Ukraine and New Zealand, which makes me, I suppose, Rasian. Can you imagine how it was to grow in a Soviet school with a very strict educational system, when you're punished for basically everything and being different? Being Korean in a majority of Russian-speaking people who look different to you, it's pretty hard. All my life trying to fit in, and I tried so hard, because being Asian kid with a non-identified Asian family, because it wasn't really cool to talk about your ancestry. So a lot of people could come to me and said, wow, your surname is Hwan. Where did you come from? And I was so tired to answer, but I created a really cool story. I said that I'm an uneligible granddaughter of South Korean dictator, and it gave me lots of attention. People like, wow, you're so cool, you're non-mainstream, you're non-Soviet, hidden non-Soviet. And it wasn't well until actually it was addressed by school. Like one of the teachers asked my mom, your daughter is actually talking that she is a granddaughter of a South Korean dictator. Is that true? And mom said, such a bullshit. And I had a talk with teachers in my family. So I dropped this story. And it wasn't true. I just wanted to be included. But people who knew me well quickly realized that this is something they don't identify me. Maybe I didn't have a sense of style the same as the mainstream. Maybe I wasn't looking like others. I tan really quick, and my hair is kind of big if I don't straighten them. So some people who were not exposed to different culture would come to me and say, hey, you're a Negro. I said, wow, do I look like one? And it was not offensive simply because I didn't really know that it should be. And this is another connotation that culture brings to us. They teach us that we should be offended, or that's how you treat people who are different. And in general, culture sometimes tells us that there are fat people and there are thin people. You can't be in between. That there are white people and black people. You can't be in between. That there are gays and straight people. You can't be in between. There are a lot of binary thinking, 0 or 1. One side or another. And I went through it all my life. It was quite interesting to break some of those rules simply because I can. For a long time, I actually didn't understand why people can't really relate to me. It was really hard for me to fit in. And then suddenly I realized that I am the overlap that actually happens between this and this, between 0 and 1, between white and black, between fat and thin, between Koreans and Asians and Russians, New Zealanders and Ukrainians. This is actually quite deliberating, because once you try to fit in, suddenly you realize that there is no place for you to fit in, because no one is like you. And when you're young, it's really hard it is to live with no tribe that was created for you. This is a story of what happened to me before I actually came to New Zealand. And in New Zealand, I tried to fit in New Zealand society. Gosh, this was the hardest task of all. Back in Ukraine, I had a career in media. But here, all my achievements didn't matter, because I was only a foreigner. I was just some girl who had lots of ambitions, who had an accent, who had a very quirky way of dressing up. I came with the idea that I'm so clever, I'm the best of all. People will be standing in queue to get me as an employee. Well, guess what? It didn't happen. No one wanted to employ me. With all my degrees, with all the things that I've done in the past, with all my achievements, I was just a foreigner. And I tried the same with my professional life and with my personal life as well. Because if you probably know, when you marry someone, when you go to join their families, you become part of theirs. And I actually appreciate it with New Zealand culture now, but I didn't understand it then. In Russia, we are brought up as the culture of individualists. So your personal achievements are most important. You have goals, you have ways to reach those goals. When you achieve, you're supposed to be happy. So everything is kind of goal-based and very individualistic. Well, what I found here in New Zealand, especially recently, that you can't really be defined by only you yourself. You can be defined by the community you belong to. If this is a good community, if they help others, if they help each other, if they're diverse enough, if they have something to live by, they have values, then you're probably a good person, because you're not defined only on your individual traits, you're defined on people around you. One person told me that you are a sum of people around you. I thought it's great, I thought it's amazing. So when I tried to fit into the communities with all my brightness, as I thought, and individualistic values, it didn't really work. People thought that I am some sort of a peacock that landed up and out back. After some time, I just realized to drop my efforts and just to be myself. So instead of doing this, this, and this, I just decided I'll do this, this, and this. And that included my professional development, or my work, to go to do arts. I never did arts before, I didn't have time. To learn about some other cultures and have friends finally, because guess what, I did not have friends, I had colleagues. And colleagues were cool because you have common goals and it allow you to reach your own goals. But it does not necessarily mean that after you leave your workplace, you keep them, because they're just not part of your everyday thing. And I now have friends who are away from me, living away from me, but they actually value what I do. And we do not necessarily meet every day, but we are on the same wavelength. I also joined a multi-ethnic council, which allows me to help other migrants who had this very similar fight with the reality, should I say. One of the big things that's happening for me right now, and actually separates several communities and several diverse communities, is about the war that happens between Ukraine and Russia. This war started in 2014, and a lot of people actually didn't know because it wasn't very well talked about. And Russia invaded Ukraine, and they started to bomb our cities, they started to explode power stations and things like that. And guess what? I was the president of the Russian-speaking community in Taranaki, which was really painful, because how I can be Ukrainian, who is the president of Russian-speaking community, without going mad? And I decided that maybe I'm that overlap that will help to heal some people who both have Russian and Ukrainian descendants here in Taranaki. For those who sometimes feel that they sit on a fence, they can't identify with it on another, or just don't have a mainstream views of typical Russians or typical Ukrainians. I first of all made a proposition to rename our community. Instead of a Russian-speaking community, we are now called International Club. Yay! Who knows how many republics were there in Soviet Union before it collapsed? I'll give you an idea. Was it 5, 10, 15, or 20? Any guesses?
15.
15, but 15, can you imagine? Now, from one country, 15 countries emerged with their own culture, with their own language, with their own costumes, with their own pop stars and things like that. Now, in our International Community Club, are people from Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Belarus, Russia, Baltic republics, who were the first to separate because they suffered the most, Ukrainians, Russians, and people like that. We do not discuss politics because this is the topic we don't feel comfortable about. But we gather to sing together, we gather to eat together, we share our food, sometimes we share gossip, sometimes we talk about our kids, about our families, and we go to the concerts or do something else. And I believe that the culture that can unite us, and creating a community where each of us is more than the sum of all of us, is actually quite encouraging, and it gives me the purpose of life. When I look at the person, I actually don't look at the age group they belong to, at their background, or what their parents did or came from. I just try to understand what values this person has. Whether I can be in the same room with this person and feel safe and happy and learn something, because you can learn a lot from people from different groups. The interesting international research by McKinley Group, which is an international group, says that companies that has a diverse management are doing much better, 30% probability more to get over the average revenue, more than average revenue. But I disagree with the fact that diversity can solve all the problems. You bring people from different age group, nationality, and beliefs in the same room. It's not necessarily will make this group great. What will make this group great is that everyone in the group actually listens to the other person of a diverse background. Give them some time, give them some respect, and maybe give them some space, because sometimes we actually need some space. That is the basic what I was going to say, but I was going to give you some space and maybe ask some questions, because I don't know, I believe I'm a unique person. You wouldn't meet another Olena Williams. Just living it here.
When you were a teenager, like this age group, did you think as much about culture as you did when you were as an adult?
When I was a teenager, I was really angry. I was angriest person ever. I was angry at everyone. I was angry at my parents because they brought me to this world and I was different. I was angry at the teachers because I thought they're so dumb. I thought that I'm the cleverest at school because I know this, and this, and they're talking about something really stale and boring, and I know the funny way of doing it. The fact that I was nerdy, I had difficulties to connect with my peers because I was thinking that people in general are very dumb. Life taught me that I was wrong, because when I get to the uni, and it was National Aerospace University where we built systems for big airplanes and things like that, I learned that I'm actually not the cleverest in the room. I started to write poetry, this helped me, and I couldn't find any public activity or group activity that will fit me. Sports was annoying because I couldn't really achieve well in it. And once you can't achieve in something, you can't really love it. To love something, you need to know it. When I was a teenager, I just thought that life is really, how do I say it without swearing? Bad thing. Well, I'm recording it, so I don't want any records. So I thought that life is a really bad thing. There is no perspectives. I was angry at adults, particularly my parents. I was angry at peers. The only person I could relate to well was my friend. And then when she actually had chosen some other friends over me, it was so hurtful that I was even angrier. And I thought that I was going to change this world somehow. And by change, I actually didn't mean positive change. Distraction was my thing. I like heavy music still. And I work at the local radio station. So one of my proteges, he's the musician. He works in a band where he's a drummer, heavy metal, and he has a radio show about heavy metal. So although I'm supposed to like pop and stuff, and I look like a middle-aged female, deep inside there is still a very angry teenager.
When you first came to New Zealand and you had your first job here, did you find the slang that Kiwis use hard to understand?
For the first months I was just nodding and smiling. And people thought that I have a really good character because I didn't argue with anyone. In fact, I didn't say anything. I was just nodding and smiling. Yeah, the hardest part for me was actually, as you know, I thought that I was very clever, right? And I thought I was very humorous and such a good person, right? Why people don't like me? Why they don't understand my humor? God's sake. I was trying to translate my Russian jokes into English, and everyone was like, yeah, cool. Thank you for telling us that.
Yeah.
Didn't really work. So one of my goals of living in New Zealand is actually to become a funny person, and that's where Jess comes. Jess is my teacher of being funny. I don't know whether it works, but I've been on a stand-up comedy stage twice. Once people laughed, the second they didn't, so I still need to work hard on it.
Everybody give a big clap for Olena Williams coming to come and talk to you today.
Hey!